Good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, Nina.
It's a beautiful, almost threateningly spring day today. It's absolutely gorgeous out there, although very cold.
I'm Charlotte Howarth,
And I'm Nina Bilby.
and this is the stone
The
carving
stone carving
and lettering takeaway.
Takeaway. Yes, nailed it. So who have we got today, or what are we doing today, you and I?
Well, I have got an interview that I recorded with Catherine Samy, who is the chair of the Board of Trustees for the Lettering Arts Trust. And then after that, we have an interview with Sue Apergis, who is the beneficiary of a journeyman scheme from the Lettering Arts Trust. So we're going to talk to them about their roles and experiences that they've had.
That's fab. I look forward to that.
And then we have the fitting room.
We've always got the fitting room.
I think that's always my favourite bit.
Interviews are always my favourite bit.
Oh, I'm glad we've got differences there.
No, I like the fitting room. I like to see where you go with it, actually. That's my favourite bit of the whole podcast.
Okay, so we'll listen to Catherine now. So here is the interview with Catherine.
Today I am talking to Catherine Samy, who is the chair of the Board of Trustees for the Lettering Arts Trust. Welcome, Catherine.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
So do you want to just tell us a little bit about the Lettering Arts Trust?
Basically, it exists to make sure that letter cutting and the lettering arts continue to flourish. I mean, there was a time when it was on the heritage red list, endangered list as a heritage art, and it no longer is. And I think that's down to, in part, the Lettering Arts Trust, but also all those who support artists and funders who support the charity.
So the Lettering Arts Trust has a number of different arms to it. A training arm, it's like an information point for people who want to find out more. And it also has a shop that people can buy beautiful pieces of work, and a commissioning arm for people who want to commission not just memorials, but we're really here today to talk about the training and the journeyman scheme. How does this come about? How does it happen?
It's interesting. I mean, the training arm of it is really the cornerstone of what the charity gets up to. And that sort of manifests itself through apprenticeships, as you say, journeyman, but also online training as well, more recently. And to go back to how it all started, 35 years ago, the founder, Harriet Fraser, realised that there weren't a lot of stonecutters about when she wanted to commission a piece. And so she sort of started saying, well, how does the training happen? Really realised that the training courses that had once been very much part of the art schools had dwindled. So that notion of how do you pass the skills from one generation to the next had to be achieved through something else. And there were apprenticeships going on from letter cutting workshops all around the country, but there wasn't sort of that official, here's an apprenticeship scheme. So that's what Lettering Arts Trust set up at that time. And then a while later, one of our artists, Eric Marland over in Cambridge, who runs a very well-known course with Tom Perkins, he found that some people were coming back and back each year and just said to us, I think we've got to do something else because they're not getting more out. And out of that came the idea of a journeyman. And so the journeyman scheme is there to help people who have a skill to hone other areas of their skill.
So the journeyman's different from the apprenticeship scheme that you offer, and we're mostly just going to talk about the journeyman scheme today. And so what that really offers is somebody who is setting out on their own. It offers, am I right in thinking, the opportunity to refine a number of their skills and go and work with one or more different letter cutters for short periods of time, and to see not just how to technically do things, but learn about the running of a workshop and how you manage to keep afloat, really, especially in those early years when you don't have many commissions to begin with. And I know the Lettering Arts Trust offers quite a lot of support in helping people.
I think the journeyman scheme started as a sort of fill in the missing parts in someone's skill set, very much on the art side. And as you say, it allows for, 4 weeks or 6 weeks funded training. And that might be with one or more artists. But it has shifted into this, how do I set up? How do I run a workshop, etc. as well? Because you're so right. That's the really challenging bit. Someone can go through all their training, be it through, City and Guilds or apprenticeship with us or whatever, and come out, and then they've got the harsh reality of setting up a studio and keeping people aware that you exist and finding commissions and all of those sorts of things. And then all the nitty-gritty admin type things. So increasingly, as you say, people are saying, oh gosh, and there's a bit where I don't know how to run a workshop. So I think we are seeing that shift. And also we're running online teaching to help with that, because it's a real gap.
Yeah. And in terms of fundraising, because the Lettering Arts Trust is a charitable company and always looking for people to help with fundraising, people can donate money, small or large sums are always welcome. But just by going to the Lettering Arts Trust website and buying things from the shop, that helps as well, doesn't it?
It does, or commissioning a piece. When you commission through Lettering Arts Trust, people who might want a headstone or whatever, if they come via Lettering Arts Trust, which is our website, you can see the range of artists that are there. And if you commission through us, a part of that commission goes back virtuous circle into the training schemes, into the journeyman and apprentice. People, as you say, donate wonderfully, smaller and larger amounts. There's the whole legacy thing, that if people put us in their will, then there's the legacy, but there's also the gift aid aspect of it. It's tough. I won't pretend it's not, especially in this climate. It's very tough. But what I'm always struck by, Charlotte, is when you look at a finished piece of artwork, lettering artwork, but any artwork, you're looking at the result, not just of that person having created that independent piece, but years of honing a skill, years of graft and learning and so on. And I'm always fascinated by the fact that people, will buy something and take it away and put it on their wall, and it's lovely, and we get some money that goes back into the system from that. But actually, if that piece could talk through the voice of the artist, they'd be saying, God, that was hard. I worked, I did this training, I went to art school for 3 years. So it's a really worthwhile thing to support those artists through those training years.
And if people want to see a range of work, I know that the Trust has a range of exhibitions that come over the years. There's one, the Nereids is going to Birmingham at some point.
Lovely Nereids, which are the sea goddesses. They're going to the Moseley Baths, which is the listed old baths building, which is one of the few baths that are still going from that era. It's a community centre up there. And the Nereids will be swimming around in the Moseley Baths.
That's a fantastic sounding location for that exhibition.
Yeah, it's a lovely location.
Do we know the dates?
February, I will come back to you with the dates. We just had to move, sadly, from January because their whole boiler system, being very old and listed, they're not allowed to change anything, and their boiler system gave up. But we're back in business for February, so I'll let you know as soon as we know the date. We have sort of wandering exhibitions. We have capsule exhibitions that we are always interested in hearing from galleries and spaces, whether they would like us to visit and be in the country somewhere. And we also work with collaborators, like Rachel Bebb Contemporary down in Wiltshire or City and Guilds, to actually create new shows where artists create new material for a particular theme.
That's really good. So what we'll do is, if people want to find out more about the Lettering Arts Trust, it's www.letteringartstrust.org.uk. You can look on the website, you can see information about training courses, you can see information about how to commission pieces of work, and everything, all the money that you spend on the website helps to go to support the training of people like Sue, whose interview is going to be coming up next. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Instagram as well, Lettering Arts Trust on Instagram, for those little snippets of day-to-day life.
That's great. Thanks for talking to us, Catherine.
Thanks, Charlotte. Been a pleasure.
And I can confirm that the Nereids exhibition is on at the Moseley Baths in Birmingham from February the 20th till the 10th of March.
That was pretty good, wasn't it? I mean, she's a dynamic chair of the charity, or is that what she is? She's the chair. Is that
She's the chair of the board of trustees, and
chair?
yeah, the board the all the trustees put in hours and hours of work on a voluntary basis. They're not paid for any of the work, and it's a huge commitment that they undertake to keep the charity running. And as Catherine says, it's been a really challenging few years that they've survived and come through, which is really good.
They're a very special organisation, aren't they? Because if you go globally, they are so rare to have their organisation specialising in carved letters and inscriptions.
And they do a brilliant job at supporting artists through the training, but also we get work through them through the commissioning process, which helps us to keep going as well. So loads of really positive things there. And
Brilliant.
If people do want to go and see any of the exhibitions, they can look on their website, and all the dates will be up there. But coming up now, we've got the interview with Sue Apergis, who you know.
Yeah, so I've known Sue a good 5 or 6 years now. I trained her for 3 years in stone carving. And I'm really looking forward to this because I'm really interested to see where she's gone from graduation and her career progression. She's one of the most committed and driven students I've ever taught. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what she's doing and how she's getting on.
Yeah, well, here we go with the interview with Sue.
Sue, morning.
Morning.
So you have been awarded a journeyman scheme by the Lettering Arts Trust, and I understand that that's a bursary to help you to cover the cost of some learning for letter carving. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's come at a really good time and a real bonus.
Okay, so your background, just to get to talk about how you got here. You're not a sprightly young teenager. You have got a whole background career in graphic design, so you're already a really good designer, and you've now gone into stone carving. So do you just want to tell me a little bit how you took that route?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, not being a sprightly young thing, I have been working as a graphic designer probably for well over 30 years, believe it or not. Graphics has always been, it was a passion of mine since the age of about 10. Or as soon as I knew what a graphic designer was, that's kind of what I wanted to be. Sadly, almost as soon as I got into the working of graphics and the workplace, I felt quite let down by it as an industry. And working my way through it, my passion of design has never ceased, but the workplace is very harsh and quite brutal, and long hours, not being paid for it, could go on. But anyway, I've always liked typography and design layout and colours and things like that. So it's always been sort of there in the background. So coming to letter cutting and designing of letter forms, not second nature, but it's something that is always in my background.
Yeah, so what I can see working with you in the times that we've worked together is I can see you've got a really good eye for design, but you know, one of the reasons you've come to me is to help get that feeling of form to become more intuitive with your lettering, and I can already see a huge improvement since we've been working together. But it's interesting because I always say design is like the number one important thing for letter carving. The lettering is important, but the design is almost more important. So you've already having those skills gives you a really good head start because you've recently started working for yourself, given up a secure job. But let's just go back a bit. I'm jumping forward. So I know you trained at the City and Guilds of London Art School. You did the carving course there, didn't you? Just let's talk a bit about that.
I did. Well, I mean, to be fair, if we go back even further than that, you know, it started, my father passed away almost 15 years ago now. We commissioned a local funeral masons to do a headstone. And they used to do machine cut ones, but they also did very sort of simple hand done stones as well. And we had a small one done for my father. It was something that just fascinated me straight from the start. And I thought, oh, I'd love to have a go at that. That's sort of totally in the opposite direction where graphics is going, where everything's computerized. This is going back to the very first traditions of people making marks. So that was sort of what really sparked me off. And then from that, I did an evening course for a year at City Lit, which was a real
In
rounded...
stone carving?
In stone carving. So it started off with a relief carving for a term, and then it went off to do letter carving for a term, and then there was sort of a very minute bit of three-dimensional carving right at the end. So it kind of got you an all-round feel,
Like a foundation course in carving.
Yeah, a foundation course, and I absolutely loved it. So from there I went to more evening courses and then a couple of weekend courses, and I got to hear about the City and Guilds and this wonderful course that looked like it was a million miles away from ever being achieved, but in the back of my mind I thought, right, you know what, that's what I want to do. So I was very fortunate that just before I started at City and Guilds, I was able to do 1 day a week with this lovely woman, Annette Sterling, who sort of took me under her wing, sort of realised my passion.
Oh, I didn't realise you'd worked with Annette prior to going to City and Guilds.
Yes.
So I was trained by Annette at City and Guilds in the late 80s and early 90s.
It comes full circle, you see. Everything does. And she was fantastic. You know, she gave me lovely lunch every lunchtime, and this was something she purely did out of her own sort of time, and got me to a sort of level where, you know, certainly not professional, but got me to a stage that when I got to the City and Guilds, I was quite competent at doing a V-cut in stone. Getting there.
You know, that's quite something to be able to do a nice V-cut, actually. It sounds easy and it can look easy, but if you've ever picked up a hammer and a chisel for the first time and tried to do it, it's not as easy to do. So that was quite a thing to go in with those skills.
Yeah, and it took you away from not being frightened about stone and a chisel. You know, yes, it was getting you out of your comfort zone because, you know, whatever mark you make shows up instantly.
So you did 3 years at the City and Guilds.
3 years there.
And you also, when you were at the City and Guilds, you were really brilliant at entering those competitions. So I know that you won a medal competition and designed the most beautiful medal. Who was that for?
This was actually for the British Art Medal Society, and they're very different to medals that you get for bravery and all that type of thing. They are literally stories to be told on your hand. So there's sort of two sides. So it's all about telling a story. And I suppose my graphics background really helped with that, because graphics and branding is all about telling stories and in a very simple form and as explicit as possible. And obviously, if you've only got two sides of a coin, which is a very small item anyway, you have to tell your story instantly, and people have to be able to get it.
So did you have hand skills before you did the courses, or was that something you had to develop?
I'd always had hand skills, you know, even from my foundation. You know, from years ago, I could handle a scalpel knife pretty well. I mean, I couldn't do any heart operation, but you know, or brain surgery, but I can cut a straight line or a curve quite to a line pretty well. So I always sort of knew I could handle a knife. You know, that you're halfway there if you can do that. You just have to handle the hammer then as well.
My understanding is that how many years ago did you finish at City and Guilds?
We finished, luckily, just before the pandemic in 2019.
Okay, so you did 3 years full time at
3
City and
years
Guilds.
full time.
And then after the City and Guilds, what did you do after you left wanting to start a new career? I mean, what's your journey from there? So you've done your training at City and Guilds, and then you finish your training and you are now setting up your own business and still on that learning journey, but doing brilliantly and making lovely things. So how did you get from City and Guilds to this point in time where you are now?
I mean, it was a long way to come, but not a long way to come. For the first 6 months, I had a few leads from City and Guilds, and I did a couple of things in my spare time. Also, from the British Art Medal Society, I won a bursary to go to Bulgaria to do some medals over there, which was just something, it was totally unexpected, but wonderful to get into. Then came back, then thought, oh dear, I'm going to have to start paying some bills. I'm going to have to keep that roof over my head. So I asked my old company if I could do some freelance with them, graphic design wise. And from there, you know, I was able to pay back some of the bills that I had from doing the 3 years of City and Guilds, because it was quite an undertaking. Also, so not working for 3 years. And it enabled me to sort of get moving again financially. Then the pandemic came, and I was fortunate enough that they asked me to work with them again full time. So I stopped the freelance status and went back to being an employee, which at the time, that first 6 months for all of us obviously I was fortunate enough to enjoy working from home and the sunshine that we all got. But then after, the 2 years sitting at the desk in front of the computer, still doing long hours, not really seeing the light at all, and one day literally moving into the next, not even being able to carry on what I was doing at the City and Guilds, it made me very sad, and it made me want to rethink everything. So towards the end of the pandemic, I thought, right, it's now or never. If I don't use these skills, I'm going to lose them, and that would be a sad waste of 3 years. So I had lots of encouragement from yourself, Charlotte, and obviously Nina at the City and Guilds, and to push me on the way to becoming letter cutter and stone carver and getting going with my own business.
So you put your financial stability aside for quality of life, enjoyment of work, and some choice over how you operate on a day-to-day basis. And how long ago did you do that?
So I started literally the beginning of March this year. Initially, I sort of got going, and I think because I had quite a bit of work for you to do and little bits of projects here and there, it was really motoring and very scary, very scary. You feel like you've got to be working the whole time to live, but then you realise that actually you can't sustain that, and that won't sustain anyway, and then you have to sort of start looking for more pieces of work, and reality sort of hits you. But no regrets, absolutely.
It
loving
actually
that.
takes a while to establish yourself as an artist when you first take that leap. I think the early years are some of the hardest to just keep pushing through. So the help from the Lettering Arts Trust to be able to focus a little bit more on learning at the same time is really invaluable, I think, as well as, because what the Lettering Arts Trust have done with the Journeyman is they've split your Journeyman scheme between me and Annette Sterling. So what we offer is professional development and a really robust critique of where you are and how to push you to improve your already excellent skills, but just to keep pushing you. But on the back of that, you still need to get commissions and work in. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that you have at the moment. So what do you think the challenges are, and what other challenges, highs and lows, do you think?
It's very much sort of getting yourself noticed, getting possibly your first commissions through the door, and realised I've got some commissions in the pipeline, but they still seem a long way off from being realised. And when you start working, when I've started working with you, and realise, there's a lead time on stone, there's a lead time on getting things into ground, there's the discussion with the client backwards and forwards. And sometimes it takes a very long time from the work initially coming in to getting the money and out the door.
Getting the money.
And that's quite difficult. In graphics world, it's very immediate. It's very, you have a deadline almost every day. This one is deadline, so to speak, but in a very different way.
I always find, for me, from initial consultation to fixing a sort of normal headstone style job, 12 months for me is quite a fast turnaround, actually. People are often surprised by the long waits for materials. They're not aware of the process. It's interesting, I hadn't thought of that as a challenge to starting out because, but of course it is, because that cash flow that is your business takes a while to establish, and because it's a slow and segmented route in, it actually makes it more difficult, doesn't it?
You're also having to get in other suppliers that originally, in a graphics background, you're just not used. You don't need them. Yes, you need a printer at the end of the day, but pretty much once it's gone to print, it's not really your business anymore. If anything, the client sort of sorts that bit out. So this, you're getting quotes, estimates from various different sources, bringing them all together, and you are the one sole.
The buck stops with you,
and the client comes to you for everything. So you have to have all that information to hand. You have to be responsible for these things coming on time. It's like project management as well as stone carving, and
It
I'm
is
finding
project management.
the admin actually takes over more time than you think, and obviously it isn't enjoyable, but it's absolutely necessary, and that's quite a challenge.
I always say that I could actually spend all my time doing admin if I wasn't disciplined and never do any carving, but then I'd never earn any money. And so sometimes it's quite difficult to get down into the workshop to actually carve, because there's always something pressing in the work in the office side of the business. But you have to learn to say, right, now I'm carving, because that is essentially what brings the money in.
You know what? That's exactly what I'm finding. I'm finding it's I've got to do that email, and I've got to do this, and I've got to do that. And in actual fact, you can do that, and that can take well over half a day. You're in front of the computer screen, which is exactly what I wanted to get away from. But it feels almost safer. I don't know why. It does feel a little bit more homely and less scary than touching stone. And maybe it's the sort of perfectionist in me. Maybe it is the initial starting, getting that chisel onto stone. It can be weirdly a daunting thing to do, even though I've been doing it now for so many years. But that is how it is.
You're at the beginning of your self-employed carving career. Moving forward, what you'd like to get is a nice, interesting mix of commissions and...
Yes, obviously at the City and Guilds, it wasn't just lettering, it was three-dimensional carving and sculpture work as well, and don't really want to give that up.
So I suppose what we're saying is you're open to commission.
Open to commission.
You'd love a commission. Anything, nothing too big or too small?
Nothing too big, nothing too small. And I have worked on big projects with a team, and teamwork I think is absolutely essential. Collaboration and
I think what's really nice about coming through the Lettering Arts Trust and working through City and Guilds is there's a fantastic network of support there. So I was taught by Annette 1989, early 90s, and all these years later, Annette is still there if I need to ask her a question. There's Nina who offers a lot of support. There's a really nice network of people to help you on. That's what I feel anyway, looking in. I don't know how it feels.
Oh, it does. It feels a family. Even your fellow students that you were working with for 3 years, it's very tight-knit and close. Everyone feels like helping everyone.
Yeah, because actually taking advice and sharing the difficulties, getting somebody to read a quote because you don't know whether it's on too high, it's very difficult to gauge those things. Even now I sometimes have no idea whether I'm in the right ballpark, and so I will talk to somebody about it and see what their opinion is. I think it makes a huge difference that not keeping it all to yourself. It
does, and it's one of those things, you can't be good at everything. And finding other people to help you with the bits that either you need help with or that you're sort of struggling with, having someone there to sort of back you up, but also sort of sharing that work out. If there is something that you can't do, get other people to come in and help you. And I find that, one, you can do the job easier. It's less of a strain on your mind. You feel more relaxed about it. Doing everything as a team, it is a problem.
And it's fun working with other people, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a problem shared and far less weight on your mind.
I'm just going to say, if people want to get in touch, have a look at your work, where can they go to see some examples of what you've done? How can they get in touch with you? Where can we look?
Well, I have an Instagram account. It's Sue Apergis, all one word. Website is www.sueapergissculptor.com. If you take a look at that, a lot of my work is up there with drawings, some medals, some bit of everything really. There's a lettering side as well. So, yeah, please get in touch. Can't wait to start work with you.
That's brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming on to the Stone Carving and Lettering Takeaway. And maybe we'll catch up in another 6 months and see how you're getting on. We'd love to hear.
I'd love that.
How the journey's going.
Yeah,
all right.
Can't wait.
Thanks ever so much, Sue.
Thanks, Charlotte.
Right, now to the fitting room. Charlotte Howard, what have we got today in the fitting room?
Well, in the fitting room today we have the boob in the bee.
The boob and the bee in the bee. Boob in the bee.
The boob.
Everybody out there is like, what?
There'll be a few people who know exactly what's coming up by that reference, and it's a very niche selection of people. Right. And so what it is, when I was doing my few days teaching at college last week, I was just laughing with the lettering tutor, Tom Young, and I asked him if he'd ever been taught a way of understanding the shape of the bee, the bottom inside shape of the bee, in the same way I had. And I was taught by quite a number of male tutors that the inside shape of a bee was the same shape as a perfectly formed breast.
And I want to add, those people, those individuals that taught you, were some of the top, and still are, some of the top letter cutters this country has produced.
They were,
and I find it a little bit shocking that that kind of language was used then. But you were saying that was very normal, and
it seemed very normal. But now I say it out loud, I'm actually really shocked by it. But I was also really delighted to discover that it doesn't happen anymore. And even Tom had never heard of it.
Yeah,
and I
good,
was amazed by that. I thought that was fantastic, that, you know, this really misogynist way of describing a letter shape is finally dying out. I mean, I know we're laughing about it, but I remember when we were being taught, it actually made me feel incredibly inadequate as a young woman, being told that was the shape that your breasts should be, is that inside shape of the bee. You know, if I'd drawn them what my breasts were like, my bee wouldn't have looked very nice.
And it's extraordinary, isn't it? So there would have been a whole cohort of female students that would have gone through all of those studios, those workshops, and every single one of them presumably were taught the same way. But perhaps were you unusual as a female student, as a trainee, or
I don't know.
Being trained with you? Or?
I can't. It's so funny. It's such a simple thing to remember that I don't remember. I remember it being repeated on multiple occasions, but I almost can't pinpoint where and when now, because it was just a normal thing to hear. But I don't know if other people have heard it, but it's certainly something that I was taught, and I was really glad that it's dying out.
It's interesting, isn't it? Also, you know, I was trained, I went from arts BA into various career turns, and then my kind of leap into stonemasonry at the time was in the, you know, late 90s, mid to late 90s, and the kind of language and the attitudes to training, etc., was, you know, I found quite challenging, but seemed very normal in that way. And it has changed. I think it's very positive now that language and attitude towards everybody in that training environment has changed. And I think that's a really positive thing to actually focus on for us to bring up.
I agree. I think it's a much friendlier environment for everybody.
And more inclusive, actually. Yeah, it's an inclusive environment.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not perfect,
women, but for
it's
everybody.
not perfect. It certainly is not perfect. I would say that we've got a long way to go yet. But you know, the journey you and I have been on over a relatively short period of time in our lifetime is quite a steep turn, isn't it?
So what we're celebrating today really is the death of the boob in the bee.
Death of the boob in the bee. And can I say, I was taught that it should be the shape of a perfect loaf of bread.
Well, that's
a positive. That rise.
Let that rise to the top, and let the boob sink to the bottom.
Here.
So
as I get older, that's exactly what happens.
So I think on that note, what we'll say is thank you for listening.
Yes,
and
thank you very much.
If you like what you hear, follow us and hit subscribe. And if you would like to see some educational videos, we've got a YouTube channel, Apergis Academy, where we're constantly uploading small educational videos that talks about tools. I've got one to upload about pricing your work. So it's YouTube, Apergis Academy, and you can have a look at further information from us on that as well. And if you want to email us with a question or message, it's info@apergisacademy.co.uk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.